Hey guys, it's Rose here with my first Rosey Concepts video. And since listening to Melodrama this month, you might have noticed that certain pianos sound different on certain songs. Sometimes it's very high and sharp, you might say, and other times it's very dark, warm, and rounded out. There's a pretty noticeable difference between the songs Liability and Sober 2. So today I'm going to be EQing a piano or keyboard track to try and show you how a tone change in your piano may lead to a tone change in your song or album. So if you don't know what an EQ is, the full name for it is an equalizer. It's a processor that helps us equalize the different frequencies on our track. So it has knobs and buttons that relate to the different frequencies and how loud or quiet they are. EQs are super cool, and I cannot get into everything there is to know about them today, but if you want to do some research on them, you can look into all the science behind it and how they work. Today I'm going to be using a digital EQ that comes standard with your Pro Tools rig. So if you have Pro Tools, you have this EQ, but even if you don't, all EQs are the same idea, so just mess around with whatever you have and you'll figure out what works best for you. So here's just the 7-band EQ plugin on Pro Tools. It's inserted on my piano track that I recorded earlier. And as you can see, I have this graphic screen that shows me exactly what frequencies are being boosted where, and below the controls for each of the bands. I also have these two filters, which I'll show you first. This one's the high pass filter. It lets all the high frequencies pass through, cuts the lows. Low pass filter lets the lows pass through and cuts the highs. So this is the basic track with no processing on it. It sounds just like a normal keyboard, and now I'm going to use my low pass filter. This is going to stop the higher frequencies from being heard and going to give it a softer sound. So I'm just going to put it in, make a steeper curve. I'm just going to move it down to about 1K. So I filtered out everything above about 1K, and that made the track sound way warmer and way less intense. Something like this or similar to this technique is what we have got on Liability. They filter the piano so that it doesn't compete with her voice as much and contrasts as softer to her vocals. It also takes the focus off of the piano and puts it more on Lorde herself. So I'm going to zero that filter out and do something else to the track now. We're going to make it sound sharper, or a little bit. You might think that you would just do the opposite and move the high pass filter to keep the lower frequencies out, and that would get the job done somewhat, but I think that what we hear in Sober 2 has a bit more going on EQ-wise and probably a lot of other processing. This piano track seems like maybe those higher frequencies were boosted, so I'm going to go to one of my higher bands on the EQ and type in around 7K or 7,000 hertz. Lower the Q, boost it a little bit or a lot, and this is what that does. Now I'm going to add a lot of other higher frequencies to make the sound a bit more dramatically different from the original. So you can hear those higher frequencies add a lot of sharpness to the sound. They can add tension to a sound, which is what they sort of did on Melodrama. It can bring it up out of the lower register so that it becomes the focus of a track, or doesn't compete with something else you have playing at the same time. You can also move it around while you're listening to hear what's happening as you're doing it, as I just showed you. And you can mess with how big you want the band to be, which is what I was doing here. That's called the Q. You can use multiple bands at once, obviously, in conjunction with the filters. There's so much you can do with these, and this is just a basic one. I've obviously just touched the surface of EQs. There's so much more to learn about them. There are different types. Different EQs are going to have different sounds. you could mess around with them all day. At the end of the day, the only way you're going to be able to use EQs properly is to just practice with them. Start with an EQ on a track and start messing with the knobs, figuring out what frequencies sound like what. Learning EQs will obviously take some time and a lot of research and experience. I'm still experimenting with EQs every day, but go ahead and get started. You can never get too comfortable with your gear. That's all I've got for EQs today, but like I said, I hope you do some further research into them because there's a lot more than what I touched on today. Go ahead and comment one of your favorite EQs and what kind of track you like to use it on. That way we can all learn a little and get some inspiration for the next time we want to experiment. I'll see you guys next week with another Rosey Concepts video. See ya!